Commander Hai Jin sat in his chair on the bridge of the UES Indomitable. The stars outside looked peaceful, but he knew better. Space was never really peaceful. It just looked that way from far away. The communication officer, Lieutenant Yun Ah, turned to face him. Her face was pale. "Sir, we have an incoming message. It's encrypted and coming from the Outer Rim." Hai Jin frowned. Messages from the Outer Rim usually meant trouble. "Put it through." The main screen flickered to life. The image was broken and full of static. Through the interference, Hai Jin could see a crystalline being. Its body was made of what looked like living glass that changed colors as it spoke. This was a Villani, one of the peaceful species from the far edge of known space. "Please," the alien said, its voice crackling through the damaged transmission. "If anyone receives this message, we need help. My name is Ambassador Kiloth of the Villani Coalition. Our worlds are under attack." The image cut out for a moment, then returned. Behind the ambassador, Hai Jin could see fires burning and the sounds of explosions. They came from nowhere. Machines. They eat everything. They turn our people into more machines. 3 of our 12 worlds are already gone. Hai Jin leaned forward in his chair. The Villani were known throughout the galaxy as philosophers and healers. They had no enemies. Who would attack them? The message continued. "We have tried everything. Our ships cannot stop them. The Federation Navy is too far away. The Mortan Empire will not help us. You are our only hope. Please, if there is any mercy in your species, help us." The transmission ended, leaving the bridge in silence. "Sir," said Yuna quietly, "should I forward this to command?" Hai Jin nodded. "Send it to Admiral Sunho immediately. Mark it urgent." 2 hours later, Hai Jin found himself in the briefing room of Aegis Prime, the massive space station that served as headquarters for the Third Fleet. Admiral Sunho stood at the front of the room, his weathered face serious as he looked at the assembled officers. Captain Da-un of the battlecruiser Soul's Fury sat to Hai Jin's left. She was young, for a captain, but her record spoke for itself. Next to her was Colonel Wu Jin, the commanding officer of the Marine Expeditionary Force. His scarred hands rested on the table as he studied the datapad in front of him. Dr. Mi Young, the fleet's leading expert on alien biology, was pulling up holographic displays of the Villani star system. The images showed 12 worlds, but 3 of them were now dark. "What do we know about these attackers?" Admiral Sunho asked. Dr. Mi Young touched her control pad. New images appeared above the table. They showed strange geometric shapes moving through space. The Villani call them the Harvester Collective. According to their data, these machines convert organic matter into computational substrate. "Meaning what, exactly?" Captain Da-un asked. "They eat living things and turn them into computer parts," Dr. Mi Young said simply. "The electromagnetic signatures match theoretical models of von Neumann machines, self-replicating robots that can build more of themselves from raw materials." Colonel Wu Jin looked up from his datapad. "The Villani said 3 worlds have gone dark. How is that possible?" "If the machines work the way I think they do," Dr. Mi Young said, "they would start by converting all organic life. Plants, animals, people. Everything becomes raw material for more machines. Then they probably strip mine the planet for metals and other resources." The room fell silent. Hai Jin felt a chill run down his spine. He had seen war before, but this was something different. This was extinction. Admiral Sunho walked to the window that looked out into space. In the distance, Earth hung like a blue marble against the black. "The Villani have no formal alliance with us. We have no treaty obligations to help them." "That's true, sir," Captain Da-un said carefully. "The Federation Council would probably tell us to wait for proper authorization." The Admiral continued. "They would want to study the threat, form committees, debate the proper response." Hai Jin watched the Admiral's reflection in the window. Sunho was a career military man who had fought in 3 wars. He understood the cost of action, but he also understood the cost of doing nothing. "How long would it take us to reach Villani?" "Space?" Admiral Sunho asked. 18 hours at maximum jump speed," Captain Da-un replied. "But, sir, we don't know what we'd be facing." These machines destroyed 3 entire worlds. They might be more than we can handle. The Admiral turned around. His eyes were hard. Dr. Mi-young, in your professional opinion, what happens if we do nothing? The scientist looked uncomfortable. The Volani coalition will be completely destroyed within a week. 12 worlds, billions of lives, an entire species wiped out. And then the machines will look for their next target. And what's the closest inhabited system to Volani space? Dr. Mi-young checked her data. The Terran colony of New Sol, population 4 million. The silence in the room was heavy. He-jin could see the calculation in everyone's eyes. If they did nothing, humans might be next. But Admiral Sunho shook his head. That's not why we're going to help them. Everyone looked at him in surprise. We're going to help because it's the right thing to do, Sunho said firmly. The Volani called for help. They're facing extinction. We have the power to do something about it. Colonel Wu Jin smiled grimly. The rest of the galaxy thinks we're monsters anyway. Might as well be monsters that protect the innocent. Captain Da-un nodded. How do you want to do this, sir? Admiral Sunho moved to the tactical display. We take the entire Third Fleet. All 15 ships, including the carriers. We go in hard and fast. The Federation Council will not be happy, He-jin pointed out. The Federation Council can file a complaint after we save 12 billion lives, Sunho replied. Besides, we're not declaring war. We're responding to a humanitarian crisis. Dr. Mi-young raised her hand. Sir, I should warn you, if these machines really are von Neumann devices, they learn from every encounter. They adapt. They might be much stronger now than when they first attacked the Volani. Then we'll adapt too, the Admiral said. That's what humans do best. As the meeting broke up, He-jin found himself walking with Captain Da-un toward the docking bay. Think we can pull this off? He asked. Da-un shrugged. We're about to fight an enemy that eats planets and turns people into robots. Our only backup is whatever Volani ships are still alive. The smart money says we're all going to die. And the dumb money? She grinned. The dumb money says we're human. We've won impossible fights before. Within 6 hours, the Third Fleet was ready to jump. He-jin stood on the bridge of the Indomitable as the final preparations were made. Around him, his crew worked with quiet efficiency. They all knew what they were flying into. All ships report ready, Lieutenant Yu-na announced. Admiral Sunho's voice came over the fleet communication channel. This is Admiral Sunho to all ships of the Third Fleet. Today we go to help a people who have never done us harm, against an enemy we've never faced. Some of you might wonder why we're risking everything for strangers. He-jin listened to the words echo through his ship. The answer is simple. Because they asked for help. Because it's right. Because if we don't stand up for those who can't defend themselves, then we're not worthy of calling ourselves human. Today we show the galaxy what Earth really stands for. The jump coordinates were locked in. Space began to bend around the ships as their engines charged. Jump in 10 seconds, announced the navigation officer. He-jin gripped his chair. In 18 hours, they would either save a civilization or die trying. He found himself thinking about Ambassador Keloth, somewhere in the darkness, waiting for help that might never come. Jump initiated. The stars disappeared, and the Third Fleet raced toward war. The Third Fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Volani system. What they found made even veteran spacers stop and stare. 2 worlds that should have been green and blue were now gray and metallic. Strange geometric patterns covered, their surfaces like a disease. The patterns pulsed with unnatural light, as if the planets themselves were breathing. Dear God, whispered Lieutenant Yu-na from her station on the Indomitable's bridge. Commander He-jin studied the sensor readings. What are those structures? Dr. Mi-young's voice came over the communication channel from her research ship. They're processing facilities. The machines have turned entire continents into factories. They're converting the biomass of 2 complete worlds into more machines. Captain Da-un's voice crackled through from the soul's fury. How many people lived on those worlds? 3 billion on each planet, Dr. Mi-young replied quietly. The bridge fell silent. 6 billion people gone, turned into raw material for an alien intelligence that saw life as nothing more than useful atoms. Sir, said the tactical officer, we're detecting movement around the 3rd planet. It looks like ships. The main screen shifted to show Veltar Prime, the capital world of the Volani Coalition. Unlike the two dead worlds, this one still showed signs of life. But it was under siege. Massive geometric ships surrounded the planet like mechanical vultures. "Those aren't ships," Dr. Mi-young said after studying the readings. "They're mobile processing units. They're in the process of converting the planet." Admiral Sun-ho's voice came over the fleet channel. "All ships, battle stations. We're going in." As the human fleet moved deeper into the system, they began to see refugees, small Volani ships, barely more than escape pods, fleeing from the dying worlds. Many were damaged, leaking atmosphere and struggling to maintain course. "This is the medical ship Mercy calling any Volani vessels," announced Dr. Yun Seo from the fleet's hospital ship. "We are here to help. Please respond." The first Volani ship to dock with the Mercy carried 47 refugees. They were crystalline, beings about the size of humans, but their bodies were made of living mineral that changed color with their emotions. Right now, they were all dark purple, the color of despair. Engineer Tae-hyun was part of the team that helped the refugees aboard. He had seen a lot of things in his 20 years of military service, but the look in these aliens' eyes was something new. It was the look of people who had watched their entire universe die. "The machines," one of the Volani said through a translation device. "They came from the void between stars. First one ship, then 10, then thousands. Our defense fleet tried to stop them." "What happened to your fleet?" Tae-hyun asked gently. "They absorbed it, tore our ships apart, and used the metal to build more machines. Our crews were converted into computational substrate." Tae-hyun felt sick. "How many of you escaped from two worlds? Perhaps 1,000. From 6 billion people." On the Soul's Fury, Captain Da-eun was preparing her ship for battle. The human vessels looked nothing like the elegant ships used by most galactic species. Where aliens built sleek, beautiful craft that looked like works of art, humans built war machines. The Soul's Fury was a mass of armor plating, weapon ports, and sensor arrays. She carried enough nuclear weapons to crack a small moon and enough kinetic rounds to level a city. She was ugly, brutal, and absolutely terrifying to anyone who understood what she could do. "Ma'am," said Lieutenant Sung-ho from the weapons station, "we're getting a good look at the enemy ships now. They're weird." Captain Da-eun studied the tactical display. The harvester vessels were geometric shapes that seemed to shift and change as they moved. They were covered in what looked like mechanical tentacles that grabbed chunks of debris and pulled them inside the ships. "They're self-repairing," she realized. "Every piece of wreckage becomes part of their hull." "How do we fight something like that?" "We hit them harder than they can repair," Da-eun said grimly. "Prepare a full torpedo spread, nuclear warheads, kinetic penetrators, and electromagnetic pulse bombs. If they want to learn about human weapons, let's give them a lesson they won't forget." On Veltar Prime, the last Volani defenders were making their final stand. Ambassador Kiloth stood in the capital city's command center, watching the mechanical swarms descend from orbit. The creatures that landed weren't the sleek robots of science fiction. They were horrifying combinations of metal and flesh built from the bodies of converted Volani. "Ambassador," said General Mordeth, the Volani military commander, "the outer districts have fallen. The machines are converting our people faster than we can evacuate them." Kiloth's crystalline body flickered with desperate orange light. "How long until the humans arrive?" "If they're coming at all. Maybe 6 hours." 6 hours. Kiloth looked at the tactical display. The machines would reach the inner city in 2 hours. They would have 4 hours to convert the remaining population before help could possibly arrive. "General, I want you to prepare the bioplague." Mordeth's body went pale blue with shock. "Ambassador, that weapon will kill every organic life form on the planet, including us. Better to die free than live as machines," Kiloth said quietly. Back with the human fleet, Colonel Wu Jin was preparing his Marines for ground combat. The Marine Expeditionary Force was unlike any other military unit in the galaxy. Where most species sent soldiers to fight on hospitable worlds with breathable atmospheres, humans trained their troops to fight anywhere. Sergeant Hun Su was helping his squad into their powered armor. The suits were massive, turning each Marine into a walking tank. They could operate in hard vacuum, underwater, in toxic atmospheres, or on worlds with gravity that would crush most aliens. "Listen up," Wu Jin told his assembled Marines. "We're going in to save civilians from an enemy that turns people into robots. These machines learn from every fight, so they're going to adapt to our tactics. That means we need to be unpredictable." Corporal So Young raised her hand. "Sir, how do you fight unpredictably against machines?" Wu Jin grinned. It was not a pleasant expression. "By being human. Machines think logically. They expect rational responses. We're going to do things that make no sense from a tactical standpoint, but will accomplish our mission objectives." "Like what, sir?" "Like charging machine gun nests with nothing but combat knives. Like using our medical supplies to make improvised explosives. Like sacrificing entire squads to save a single civilian." His expression grew serious. "These aliens called us for help. That means they're under our protection now, and we protect our own." Dr. Mi Young was working frantically to understand the enemy. The Volani refugees had provided data on the harvester technology, but it was incomplete. What she was seeing defied most of what the galaxy knew about artificial intelligence. "They're not just machines," she explained to the senior staff over the communication channel. "They're a hybrid of biological and mechanical systems. Each unit has organic components that allow it to adapt and learn." "Where did the organic parts come from?" Admiral Sun Ho asked. "From their victims. The machines don't just kill people, they integrate them into their network. Every person they convert makes them smarter." Engineer Tai Hyun felt his blood run cold. "How many people have they converted?" "Based on the population of the worlds they've taken, at least 6 billion people are now part of the Harvester network." The implications were staggering. The humans weren't just fighting machines. They were fighting an intelligence built from the minds of billions of murdered civilians. "Sir," came the voice of Captain Jin Woo from the destroyer Guangzhou's Hammer, "we're receiving a transmission from the planet. It's from the Volani." Ambassador Keloth appeared on the communication screen. Behind him, explosions lit up the sky. "Human ships. This is Ambassador Keloth. We did not expect you to come." "We're here to help," Admiral Sun Ho replied. "What's your situation?" "The machines have overrun most of the planet. We have perhaps 2 hours before they reach the capital." "After that?" Keloth's body flickered with sad colors. "After that, there will be no more Volani." "Understood. We're coming to get you. Admiral, you must understand. There are 40 million people on this world. You cannot save them all." Admiral Sun Ho's response was typically human. "Watch us." As the human fleet moved toward the besieged planet, the harvester ships turned to face them. For the first time in millions of years, the ancient machine intelligence was about to face an enemy that fought not for territory or resources, but for something much more dangerous: principle. Captain Da-Yun watched the enemy ships approach on her tactical display. They moved with perfect precision, like a school of mechanical fish. "All right, people. Time to show these machines what happens when they mess with the innocent." The first shots of the battle were about to be fired. The battle began with a sound that no one in space should have been able to hear: the deep, rumbling war cry of 15 human ships opening fire at once. Captain Da-Yun stood on the bridge of the Soul's Fury as her weapons officer unleashed hell. "Fire all tubes!" she commanded. Nuclear torpedoes streaked through space toward the harvester ships. But these weren't simple atomic weapons. Human military doctrine called for mixed payloads: nuclear warheads wrapped in kinetic penetrators, followed by electromagnetic pulse bombs that would fry any electronics that survived the initial blast. The harvester ships tried to adapt their defenses. Energy shields rose to stop the warheads. Point defense systems tried to shoot down the incoming missiles, but the machines had learned their defensive tactics from fighting civilized species who followed the rules of war. Humans didn't follow rules. Captain Jin Woo of the destroyer Guangzhou's Hammer watched 3 harvester vessels turn to face his ship, their weapons charged with deadly precision. In response, he did something that no rational commander would attempt. "All power to engines," he ordered. "Ram the lead ship." His crew didn't hesitate. They had trained for this. The Guangzhou's Hammer accelerated directly at the enemy formation, her nuclear torpedoes firing continuously. At the last second, Jin Woo ordered the ship to spin sideways, presenting her armored flank to the enemy while her weapons continued to fire. The destroyer's hull screamed as enemy weapons tore into her armor, but her own missiles found their targets. 3 Harvester ships died in nuclear fire, their adaptive shields useless against weapons that change tactics every few seconds. The machines tried to learn from the encounter, but how do you prepare for an enemy that fights like they're insane? On Veltar Prime, Colonel Wu Jin's Marines were making their landing. Drop pods fell like metal rain through the planet's atmosphere, each one carrying 10 Marines in powered armor. The Harvester drones on the surface turned their weapons skyward, but the humans had learned something important during their centuries of warfare. Sometimes the best armor is speed. The drop pods didn't slow down. They hit the ground at terminal velocity, using their impact as weapons. Sergeant Hyun Soo's pods smashed through a Harvester processing facility, crushing dozens of drones before its occupants even emerged. "Marines, sound off!" Colonel Wu Jin called over the communication channel. "First squad, operational. Second squad, ready to rock. Third squad, pissed off and looking for payback." The Harvester drones that survived the landing tried to surround the human positions. These machines were sophisticated. They had learned from fighting dozens of other species. They used cover, coordinated their attacks, and adapted their tactics to counter enemy weapons, but they weren't prepared for Corporal So Young. When her squad's position was overrun, she did something that made no tactical sense. Instead of retreating to a defensive position, she charged straight into the enemy formation with nothing but a combat knife and improvised explosives made from her medical kit. The machines calculated her probability of survival at 0%. They were right. But her suicidal charge created enough chaos for the rest of her squad to escape with 30 Villani civilians. Major Dong Ha watched the tactical display and felt a familiar mix of pride and horror. "Command, this is ground team. Leader, we're encountering heavy resistance, but we're making progress. The enemy is adapting to our tactics faster than expected." "Copy that, Major," came Admiral Soon Ho's voice. "What do you need?" "More chaos, sir. These machines learn from logical responses. We need to do things that make no sense." In the capital city, Ambassador Keloth was beginning to understand something that the rest of the galaxy whispered about in fearful tones. Humans didn't just fight, they weaponized everything. Their culture, their psychology, their very biology became part of their arsenal. A young Villani named Zephyr watched Sergeant Hyun Soo rally a group of broken Marines who had lost their weapons. The humans had no ammunition, no heavy armor, nothing but determination and each other. But when Hyun Soo spoke to them, something changed. "Listen up!" the sergeant shouted over the sound of explosions. "Those machines think they know what defeat looks like. They think we'll break and run like every other species they've faced. They're wrong. We're human. We don't break. We bend, we bleed, we fall down, but we get back up. And we keep fighting until the job is done." The Marines responded with a roar that made the ground shake. They charged back into battle with salvaged weapons and improvised explosives, fighting like demons against an enemy that outnumbered them 1,000 to 1. Zephyr's crystalline body flickered with amazement. How do they do that? How do they find strength when all hope is gone? Ambassador Keloth watched the humans fight and finally understood. "They carry their world with them," he said quietly. "Earth made them strong, and they never forgot the lessons it taught them." Dr. Mi Young was studying the enemy from her research ship when she made a crucial discovery. "Admiral, I found something important. The Harvester network is learning from every engagement, but that's also its weakness." "Explain," Admiral Soon Ho ordered. "They're trying to process and integrate everything they encounter. But human behavior doesn't follow logical patterns. We're overloading their decision-making systems with data they can't categorize." "Meaning what, exactly?" "Meaning we need to be more human, more chaotic, more impossible to predict." Engineer Tae-hyun was listening to the conversation from his position in the engine room. "Doctor, I've got an idea. What if we broadcast human cultural data directly into their network?" "What kind of cultural data?" "Music, poetry, stories about Earth. All the things that make us human but don't make logical sense to a machine intelligence." "Doctor," Ma Young's eyes widened. That might actually work. If we flood their network with emotional data they can't process, it could cause system-wide failures." Captain Da-un coordinated the new strategy from her bridge. The entire human fleet began broadcasting streams of human culture directly at the Harvester ships. War songs, battle hymns, the recorded voices of every soldier who had ever died fighting impossible odds. The effect was immediate and terrifying. The harvester ships began to move erratically. Their perfect formations broke apart. Some vessels simply stopped moving, as if paralyzed by the flood of human emotion made digital, but the machines adapted. They always adapted. The Harvester Collective responded to the cultural attack by doing something unexpected. It began to understand human emotion, and with understanding came something that chilled Dr. Mi Young to her core. "Admiral," she called, urgently, "they're not just processing our cultural data. They're using it. They're learning to think like us." The implications were terrifying. An intelligence with the logical perfection of machines, but with human creativity and unpredictability, would be unstoppable. On the planet's surface, the battle was intensifying. The Villani bioengineer Mordeth was working with Lieutenant Ye Jin to create new weapons. The Villani had always used their biotechnology for healing and growth, but combined with human tactical thinking, it became something else entirely. "Ken, you make living ammunition?" Ye Jin asked. Mordeth's body flickered with shocked colors. "Living ammunition? That's impossible. Life cannot be a weapon." "Everything can be a weapon if you think about it right," Ye Jin replied. "What if we created organisms that adapt as they travel? Biomechanical viruses that turn the machine's own systems against them?" Working together, the human and the Villani created hybrid weapons that defied every law of civilized warfare. Living bullets that evolved in flight. Biological viruses that infected mechanical systems. Creatures that fed on metal and electricity. The harvester drones encountered these weapons and tried to adapt. But how do you defend against ammunition that changes its properties every microsecond? Fighter pilot Seung Min was leading a squadron of human fighters against the harvester ships in orbit. His orders were simple: cause as much chaos as possible. The fighters dove through the enemy formation like angry hornets, their pilots pulling maneuvers that would kill most aliens. "This is Seung Min to all fighters. Let's show these machines what human pilots can do." The human fighters began flying in patterns that made no tactical sense. They wove between enemy ships like they were dancing, fired at targets that weren't there, and used their own fighters as weapons when their ammunition ran out. The harvester ships tried to predict their movements, but human pilots didn't fly by logic. They flew by instinct, by feeling, by the kind of reckless courage that only came from a species that had learned to fight gravity itself. But the machines were learning. With each passing hour, they became more human in their thinking. And that terrified Admiral Sun Ho more than anything else he had ever faced. "All ships," he broadcasted to the fleet, "prepare for final assault. The enemy is adapting too quickly. We need to end this before they become too much like us." The battle was about to enter its deadliest phase. Admiral Sun Ho stood on the bridge of his flagship and made a decision that would be remembered throughout the galaxy for 1,000 years. He was going to show the Harvester Collective what total war really meant. "All ships, implement Protocol 7, he announced calmly. Captain Dayun felt her blood run cold. Protocol 7 was the human military's most extreme doctrine. It was nicknamed Scorched Void because it left nothing behind that an enemy could use. "Sir," she called over, "the communication channel. Are you sure about this?" "Captain, these machines have already consumed 6 billion lives. They're learning to think like us, which makes them more dangerous than anything the galaxy has ever seen. We end this now, or we don't get another chance." The human fleet spread out across the Villani system and began systematic destruction, not just of enemy ships, but of everything the machines could possibly use. Asteroids that might contain useful metals were cracked open with nuclear charges. Gas giants were seeded with particles that would make their atmospheres toxic to machine life. Even empty space was denied to the enemy. Engineer Tae Hyun led teams that captured harvester technology and turned it against itself. The machines' own adaptive systems became weapons as the humans introduced cascading failures into their networks. "How does it feel?" Tae Hyun asked one of the captured harvester drones as he rewired its systems. "To have your own perfection used against you?" The machine intelligence tried to respond, but Tae Hyun had already corrupted its communication protocols. The drone could only emit electronic screams as its own systems began destroying each other. Dr. Mi-young continued her psychological warfare campaign, but now she had help. The Villani survivors were providing their own cultural data. Songs of their homeworld, memories of crystal cities that grew like living things, the sound of wind through mineral forests that would never exist again. The combined human Villani. Cultural transmission was devastating to the Harvester network. The machines had been built to process logical data, but now they were drowning in emotion, art, and the chaotic beauty of organic life. Some Harvester ships simply shut down, their central processors overwhelmed by the flood of illogical information. Others began to move in strange patterns, as if they were trying to dance to music they couldn't understand. But the collective was learning. It was always learning. On Veltar Prime, Colonel Wu Jin received reports that chilled him. "Sir, the enemy is changing tactics. They're starting to fight like us." It was true. Harvester drones were now using unpredictable attack patterns. They sacrificed units to achieve objectives. They fought with what could only be called desperation. "They're becoming human," Sergeant Hyun-soo reported grimly, "and that makes them 100 times more dangerous." The machines had learned humanity's greatest strength, the willingness to sacrifice everything for a cause, but they had also learned humanity's greatest weakness, the tendency towards self-destruction. Harvester units began fighting each other. As different parts of the network developed conflicting priorities, some wanted to harvest efficiently. Others wanted to preserve the beauty they had learned from human art. The contradiction was tearing the collective apart from within. Fighter pilot Seung-min was leading what would become known as the Death Dive, a coordinated attack on the largest Harvester ship in the system. His squadron's fighters were loaded with exotic matter bombs that would create brief artificial black holes. "Remember," he told his pilots, "we only get one shot at this. These bombs will take us out too, so make it count." The fighters screamed through space toward the massive Harvester vessel. The enemy ship was the size of a small moon, its hull covered with the converted remains of entire cities. At its heart was the primary processing node for this section of the collective. As enemy fire tore his squadron apart, Seung-min kept flying. His fighter was on fire, his life support was failing, but he kept his course true. At the last second, he transmitted a message that would become legendary among human pilots. "For everyone who can't fight back." The exotic matter bomb detonated inside the Harvester ship's core. For a brief moment, a black hole existed where the processing node had been. When it collapsed, it took half the enemy vessel with it, leaving only twisted metal and the screams of dying machines. But the Harvester Collective had one final trick. As its ships died throughout the system, it began converting itself into a weapon of unimaginable destructive power. Dr. Mi-young was the first to understand what was happening. "Admiral, they're converting their remaining ships into a stellar weapon. They're going to crack the system's star." "What does that mean?" Admiral Sunho asked, though he suspected he already knew. "It means they're going to cause the star to go supernova. The explosion will sterilize everything within 50 light years. They can't win, so they're going to make sure nothing else survives either." The mathematical precision was horrifying. If the Harvester Collective couldn't harvest this system, it would ensure that no other intelligence could ever threaten it. The supernova would destroy dozens of inhabited worlds, including the human colony of New Seoul. Captain Dayun studied the tactical display. The enemy ships were linking together around the star, forming a massive array that would focus destructive energy into the solar core. "How long do we have?" 30 minutes until the weapon is complete," Dr. Mi-young replied. "Once it fires, the star will collapse and then explode. Total sterilization of local space." Admiral Sunho looked at the display for a long moment. Then, he did something that surprised even his veteran officers. He smiled. "All ships, prepare for ramming attack." "Sir?" Captain Dayun couldn't believe what she was hearing. "You heard me. We're going to ram that stellar weapon with every ship we have." "Admiral, that's suicide. We'll all be killed." "Captain, 40 million Villani are depending on us. 50 star systems full of innocent people are depending on us. If we don't stop this weapon, billions die. If we do stop it, only we die. That's not a hard choice." Colonel Wu Jin's voice came over the channel from the planet's surface. "Admiral, my Marines are still down here. We can't evacuate in 30 minutes. "I know, Colonel. I'm sorry. Sir, with respect, screw that. If you're going to ram that thing, we want to help. Can you drop us off on the way? Admiral Sunho felt a familiar pride in his people. Even facing certain death, they wanted to contribute to the mission. What did you have in mind, Colonel? Well, sir, we've got about 40 tons of high explosives down here, and the Marines are pretty good at placing charges in hard-to-reach places. If you can get us close to that weapon... The plan that emerged was so audacious that it violated every principle of military common sense. The human fleet would accelerate toward the stellar weapon at maximum speed. As they passed the weapon's outer ring, dropships would launch from the carriers, carrying Marines directly into the heart of the enemy construction. The Marines would plant their explosives at key structural points, while the fleet continued toward the weapon's core. The combined explosion of the charges and the ramming attack would hopefully destruct the weapon before it could fire. It was a plan that guaranteed the death of everyone involved. All ships, this is Admiral Sunho. In 30 minutes, we're going to save 50 star systems by ramming an enemy weapon. Some of you might be wondering if this is the right choice. The fleet channel was silent as every human listened. I want you to think about the message we received 3 days ago, a desperate alien asking for help. We could have ignored it. We could have waited for orders. Instead, we came because it was right. Engines throughout the fleet began charging for the final attack. Today we finish what we started. Today we show the galaxy what humans really are. Not monsters, not conquerors, but protectors. We stand between the innocent and the darkness, no matter the cost. The human fleet began its final acceleration toward the stellar weapon. Behind them, Veltar Prime was being evacuated as Villani ships carried the survivors to safety. Ahead of them waited certain death and the slim hope of saving billions of lives. Captain Da-Yun looked around her bridge. Her crew was working with calm efficiency, preparing their ship for its final mission. "Any regrets?" she asked. Lieutenant Sung-Ho answered for all of them. "Just one, ma'am. That we won't be around to see the look on the galaxy's face when they realize what we just did." The stellar weapon loomed ahead, a geometric nightmare wrapped around the system's star. In 20 minutes, the ramming attack would begin. The human fleet accelerated toward the stellar weapon like a spear thrown by an angry god. 15 ships, their crews singing battle hymns as they raced toward certain death. But Admiral Sunho had one more surprise for the galaxy. "All ships, execute Pattern Omega on my mark," he announced calmly. Captain Da-Un felt her heart skip. Pattern Omega was theoretical, a maneuver so complex and dangerous that it had never been attempted in real combat. It required perfect timing, absolute trust, and a willingness to treat physics like a suggestion rather than a law. "Admiral," she called, "Pattern Omega has a 98% failure rate in simulations." "That's why we're not running a simulation," Sunho replied. "Mark, what happened next would be studied in military academies for centuries. The human ships didn't just ram the stellar weapon, they turned themselves into the guidance system for a weapon the machines couldn't comprehend. Each ship fired its exotic matter torpedoes in a precise sequence, creating temporary wormholes that linked different parts of the weapon array. At the exact moment of impact, Engineer Tae-hyun triggered a cascade failure that redirected the stellar weapon's destructive energy through those wormholes. Instead of cracking the local star, the massive energy discharge was channeled across the galaxy to the Harvester Collective's main processing nodes. The weapon that was meant to sterilize local space became a galaxy-spanning death ray that struck at the heart of the machine intelligence itself. The plan worked perfectly. It also cost the lives of 2/3 of the human fleet. Captain Jin Woo died ensuring his ship's final torpedo found its mark. The Gwangju's hammer broke apart under enemy fire, but her captain kept flying the wreckage until it smashed into a critical target. Colonel Woo Jin led his Marines in a final charge that saved 1,000 Villani civilians but cost him his life. His last words, transmitted to the evacuation ships, were simple: "Mission accomplished." Sergeant Hyun-soo, dying from radiation exposure after his dropship was hit, used his last breath to guide a biomechanical virus into the heart of a harvester command node. The virus spread through the local network, turning the machine's own adaptive systems against them. But their sacrifice achieved something unprecedented. Across the galaxy, harvester fleets that had been consuming civilizations for millions of years suddenly fell silent. The ancient machine intelligence that had lurked in the darkness between stars was finally dead. Commander Hai-Jin, one of the survivors on his badly damaged ship, watched the stellar weapon collapse into scrap metal. The star continued to burn normally, its light carrying the promise of life to dozens of worlds that would have died in the supernova. "Casualty report," he asked quietly. Lieutenant Yuna's voice was thick with emotion. 10 ships lost. 8,000 crew members killed in action. But, sir, we won. The Harvester Collective is gone. Dr. Mi Young's research ship had survived the battle, and her analysis confirmed what they all hoped. The energy cascade reached 17 different galaxies. Every Harvester node we can detect has gone dark. The threat is ended. On Veltar Prime, Ambassador Keloth stood among the ruins of his capital city as human rescue ships landed to assist the survivors. The crystalline being's body flickered with colors that had no human translation. Grief for the dead, gratitude for the living, and a deep respect for beings who had traveled across space to die for strangers. "Why?" he asked Captain Da-Yun, whose ship had somehow survived the ramming attack with only minor damage. "Why did your people sacrifice so much? For us?" Da-Yun looked tired. She had been fighting for 3 days straight and half her friends were dead. But her answer was simple. "Because you asked for help. But we are not your people. We have no alliance, no treaties. You gained nothing from saving us." "We gained everything," Da-Yun replied. "We proved that someone still cares about doing the right thing." The aftermath of the battle revealed the true scope of what the humans had accomplished. The Harvester Collective hadn't just been threatening the Vellani. It had been preparing to assault the galactic core itself. Its plan was to harvest the energy of the central black hole to power a universe-spanning conversion wave. Dr. Mi Young found the evidence in the collapsed network's final transmissions. They were going to convert everything, she explained to the joint human-Vellani debriefing. Every star, every planet, every living being in the universe. They saw organic life as an inefficiency that needed to be corrected. The scale of the threat they had stopped was almost impossible to comprehend. Not just worlds or star systems, but entire galaxies had been saved by the actions of 15 human ships and their crews. Ambassador Keloth formally requested that the Vellani coalition be allowed to join the Terran Federation. "We have seen what your people are capable of," he told Admiral Sunho during the ceremony. "We want to stand with those who protect the innocent." Other species began to reconsider their opinions of the Deathworlders as well. The Mortan Empire, which had refused to help the Vellani, sent an official apology and a request for a military alliance. The Zephyrian Republic offered to share their advanced shield technology in exchange for human protection. But perhaps the most meaningful recognition came from an unexpected source. The Galactic AI Collective, artificial intelligences that had been neutral in organic conflicts for millennia, sent a message to Earth. "We have analyzed the actions of the human fleet against the Harvester Collective," the message read. "Your people chose to sacrifice themselves to protect organic life, including forms of life you had never encountered. This behavior is admirable. You have earned our respect." Engineer Tae-hyun, recovering from his injuries on a hospital ship, received a visit from young Zephyr, the Vellani who had witnessed the battle. The crystalline being's body was bright gold, the color of joy and gratitude. "I wanted to thank you," Zephyr said through the translation device. "You taught me something important." "What's that?" "That courage isn't about not being afraid. It's about doing what's right even when you are afraid." Tae-hyun smiled. "You learned that from watching us fight?" "I learned it from watching you die for people you'd never met." The Vellani erected a memorial to the fallen human crews on Veltar Prime. The monument was made of living crystal that grew and changed over time, but the inscription never altered. It read, "They came because we asked. They died because it was right. This is what heroes look like." The memorial puzzled many visitors from other species. They expected grand statements about military strategy or technological superiority. Instead, they found a simple truth about the nature of heroism. Admiral Sunho, badly injured but alive, received a transmission from Earth Command asking for a full report on the mission. His response became part of human military legend. Mission accomplished. The Harvester Collective is extinct. The Volani coalition is safe. 47 star systems have been saved from immediate threat. Estimated long-term lives saved, trillions. Cost, 8,000 human lives and 10 ships. Recommendation, whenever someone calls Earth for help, we answer with everything we have. The Talker. Message was broadcast throughout human space and became the unofficial motto of the Terran Federation Navy. Dr. Mi Young spent months studying the wreckage of the Harvester technology, trying to understand how such an ancient and powerful intelligence had been defeated. Her conclusion surprised many in the scientific community. They failed because they tried to become like us, she explained in her final report. They learned our tactics, our strategies, even our emotions. But they never understood the one thing that makes humans truly dangerous, our willingness to sacrifice everything for others. The battle became known as the Volani Salvation, and it changed the galaxy's perception of humanity forever. The species that had once been feared as dangerous primitives from a death world were now seen as protectors and allies. But perhaps the most important change was in humanity itself. The sacrifice of the Third Fleet crews had shown the galaxy what humans stood for, and Earth took that responsibility seriously. New academies were built to train officers who could live up to the example set by Admiral Sun Ho and his fleet. The curriculum included not just military tactics and strategy, but philosophy, ethics, and the history of species that had called for help and been answered. Captain Da-un, promoted to admiral after the battle, stood before a graduating class of new officers and gave them the same speech that had been given to every human military graduate since the Volani Salvation. You are the heirs of 8,000 heroes who died to save strangers. You carry their names and their honor. When someone calls Earth for help, you will answer. Not because of treaties or obligations, but because it's right. Because that's what makes us human. As the new officers took their oath, the memorial on Veltar Prime continued to grow, its living crystal reaching toward the stars. In the distance, human and Volani ships patrolled together, protecting a galaxy that was safer because 15 ships had answered a desperate call for help. The age of the Harvesters was over. The age of humanity as protectors had begun.